And I will say this, talking to the marshal, I think we have a happy jury. And so if you objection, I'll sustain. You can rephrase simply.
Thank you. All right. Let's look at first in your experience, the location in a product that someone buys as to the location of instructions. In your experience, can instructions on how to use a product, must they always be in the user manual, or can they be in other sections or other written instructions? Or does everything have to be in just one spot?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's pretty common that they're in a owner's manual, user manual, something like that. There's certainly other materials. So all this stuff collectively is called collateral material. So whether it's a quick start guide or some other piece of paper, it's pretty frequent that there's other pieces of documentation that come with the product besides the thing itself.
So in this case, there was also a tip card that was included, correct?
Correct.
We'll put the tip card back up on the, thank you, Mark, thank you very much. Dr. Fortenbaugh, have you seen that tip card before?
This exact one, but
That's
I think I get you talking about it.
Have you seen the language that's in this tip card before? Yes. Okay. Now, this tip card has on top of it, identifies this for a Milwaukee product, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then next, it talks about the operator's instructions for the MW500 electrode prep for getting, and then it says negative ORP readings. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. In your expert opinion, what is this communicating to the operator of this product?
So it's giving some instructions for a specific case for if you want to measure something that you think is going to have a negative ORP.
Okay. So this is a subset of there's negative ORP and there's positive ORP, correct?
Correct.
This is for those who want to do negative ORP.
Correct.
If an operator never wanted to do negative ORP readings, then this may be something they don't need to be concerned with.
Right, not applicable.
Okay. But if someone did, they might want to look at this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's just go over it real quick. Why would putting this card with the bold, what was the wrong word? The red lettering, what does that, in your experience, tell operators or people that open a box? Why does it make a difference if that's all in red? And you're the one that studies these things, right? You look at these sort of things, what to do. Tell the jury, please, why that's important.
Right. So from a human factors perspective, I talk about different things being involved, perception, reaction, things like that. One of the things is contrast. So being able to see things, and things are going to pop out to you if you put black letters on black background. You're not going to be able to see it that well. So having various colors or difference in colors can be attention grabbing, and that's really kind of the first step of making a warning or instruction, is trying to get your attention. Hey, please read me.
Okay.
Some things actually literally say, please read me.
Okay. So in your opinion, Dr. Fortenbaugh, is Milwaukee communicating through this tip card exactly what with regard to negative ORP readings and putting it in the way that they did? I'm sorry.
I'll sustain.
What is the importance, in your opinion, with regard to that section that's highlighted?
Again, it's to just try to get your attention. Hey, are you a person that might want to do negative ORP readings? This is for you.
Okay. All right. Next one, there's a spot down there that's highlighted in yellow. What does highlight do?
Again, another way to try to grab your attention.
Okay? In that same paragraph, there's something that's underlined. What is that trying to do?
Again, another way to try to grab your attention. I'm going to stick out.
Okay. In your opinion, did you find this card to be attention grabbing?
Yeah, when you look at it, you can see, you know, there's a part in red there, there's something highlighted, I'm looking at that. Yeah, it's good, and when you get the product, when you open it up, it's the first thing, like, right if you open the box, it's kind of on the top, so it's right there.
Okay. In this paragraph, it says platinum does not oxidize easily. Do you see that?
Yep.
Did I read it correctly?
Yes.
Then it talks about oxidation process can be accomplished by letting the probe sit in very acidic white distilled vinegar for 48 hours before use. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
The electrode must also be stored in distilled vinegar and at all the time when not in use. Did I read that correctly?
Read it correctly.
Thank you. And we have the highlighted, do not store the storage bottle for long-term storage. Use a cup or jar, and only use the storage bottle with vinegar when traveling with the unit. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, are these instructions?
Yes, some of them is just, you know, literal information, just background information, but some of them are instructions.
Okay, and in your opinion, Doctor, is these words that they're using something that a normal adult would be wanting to use an ORP meter and be able to read and understand?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you understand it?
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand maybe
I don't know if I'm a normal
none of us are normal.
person.
I'm certainly not, okay? There's other instructions on there like never let the probe dry out or set for an extended time in solution that is above 3.0 pH. Did I read that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. And finally, all ORP probes used in this manner will need to be replaced about every 10 to 12 months due to the corrosion of the platinum on the probe diode. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Is all of this information going to be helpful to the operator on how to negatively oxidize their probe, that's what it's called here, as a part of the Milwaukee MW500 meter?
Yeah, it says you gotta put it in vinegar for 48 hours before you use it, and then put it back when you're not using it.
All right. Earlier you talked about the depositions that you read, correct?
Yes.
The question I've got for you, let's make sure, did you review the instruction manual?
This user manual?
Yes, the user manual.
Yes.
Okay, and in that, what did it tell you? If you just tell the jury, what sort of things did you find in it?
I mean, the primary thing is just, once you put the battery in and turn it on, take the probe, stick it in whatever the thing is you're measuring, wait for the number to stabilize. They don't give it time, just wait till it stabilizes, and then once it's stable, then write it down, that's the number you got.
Did it talk about calibration?
Yes, it says that the meter is factory calibrated, so basically when you buy it out of the box, you don't do any additional calibration yourself, it's already done.
Okay. Did it talk about maintenance?
Yes.
So let's go back to Big Shot Mark with the whole thing. There's different segments of this instruction manual. Where's my magic wand? I think it's Carnington.
Just note for the record that he's gone 35 minutes, and I only have 25 left.
Never mind. That's taking too much time. And Mr. Kemp is right. I need to give him some time. When you put these bullet points like this, does that help the operator to know what sections to look at?
Yeah, it just kind of collects the information in chunks.
And when you put in bold, does it tell you the categories that you're looking at as well?
Yes.
Do you have any criticism of these instructions?
No.
What about the maintenance? Does it tell you about cleaning?
Yes.
Okay. Does it also tell you about the, over here, Mark, can you just go back? It tells you the specifications for this particular meter, correct?
Yep.
It also tells you optional accessories, correct?
Correct.
And it's got boxes for all these, and highlights or bold lettering, all that stuff, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty standard.
So does that help the operator understand how to use, what it is, what's going on, all of those things?
Yeah, if I got a question about the maintenance, oh, let me go to the maintenance section. I don't know how this thing works. Let me go to the operations section.
The Real Water, in this case, the defendant that's sitting over here, bought multiple meters from Milwaukee. Are you aware of that?
Yep, that's what we're saying.
Having reviewed the deposition testimony, what can you tell me about the instructions that came with this in relation to the use by Real Water?
As I understand it, especially reading Mr. Aiken's deposition testimony, like I said, he was taking a probe, stick it in the solution, wait for the number to go to whatever it was going to get to. Once it's stable, he wrote it down. And that's pretty much what it says in there. And he would put it, and then what's in the tip card, before and after, put it in the vinegar.
So, pursuant to Mr. Aiken's deposition testimony that you saw, Real Water was storing this in vinegar
Yeah, when they weren't using it.
when they were not using it, correct?
Right.
So, Real Water followed, in your opinion, Doctor, the instructions that were in the tip card?
Yeah.
So, they were doing all of the instructions on how to use the,
Yeah, to point out that he's used 37 minutes, getting to 23, which means pretty much means we're at 30 minutes.
I'll sustain as far as leading.
did you find that other products, other meters that are also ORP meters, did they also have cards that were not in their operating manual?
One of them, yeah, I saw there's a small like business card kind of thing that had some basic instructions for use and maintenance.
Did you find that in any way that Real Water, in their use of this meter, did not follow what was in the operations manual or on the tip card?
They're generally following what's in the instructions for use. I think the cleaning record was maybe not always followed because it says you're supposed to regularly clean it. I don't think Mr. Aiken said that he never cleaned it. But in terms of like the actual just use of the product, it seemed like they were using exactly how Milwaukee wrote it down.
Mr. Motley finally criticized this instructions because he thinks that that information on the tip card should have been in the operations manual. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to measure the effectiveness of the communication information. Did it get from point A to B? And it sounds like the way that they did it in these two things, the message was received. I mean, it's sticking the probe in, waiting to get a measurement, and then putting it in the vinegar when they're using it, when they're not using it. They got the information, so it worked.
Further questions?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Afternoon, doctor. Try to be as fast as possible. So basically, your testimony is we have a user manual that doesn't tell you what to do. Read it? You have to go to the tip card.
No, it says you're supposed to put the probe in the solution, wait for it to stabilize, and then take your reading.
Okay, so the user manual doesn't say anything about how to oxidize a probe, correct?
In the user manual, no.
Okay, and the user manual doesn't tell you that if you don't oxidize the probe, it could potentially give you inconsistent readings, right?
It does not say that.
Okay. All right, a couple quickies. ASTM, ANSI, those are both industry groups, right?
They are more than that. You can be.
They're funded by industry.
No.
No?
ASTM,
Who do you think funds them?
Well, ASTM, I know I'm a member, just like anybody else can be a member and they use the membership money.
Right, it's an industry group, right? Members of industry are a member of this group.
Members of industry are members, but they're not the only members.
Okay. And you mentioned the Consumer Product Safety Commission, they didn't review the warning in this case. You didn't mean to apply that to the jury, did you?
No, I have no idea what they do that.
Okay. And you talked about motorcycle helmets. Would I be correct that motorcycle helmets have the warnings right on the helmet?
They have some on them or inside, yep.
And the reason they put the warnings on the helmet is they want to make sure the user actually sees the warning, right?
That's an effective tactic.
So they don't rely on some tip card that may or may not be seen. They put it right on the product.
They have both. They have a user manual as well.
Now you referenced, strike that. You are aware that the conditioning kit was discontinued in June 2017?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope, you're right.
Or is it his report? That's the whole reason for the...
Overall, I mean, this is an expert.
Sir?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The conditioning kit was discontinued in 2017?
Yes, I was worried where the kit would just eventually disappear.
Why was it discontinued?
I don't know.
Have you reviewed documents that indicate why it was continued? Discontinued?
I may have, but I don't.
Take a look at that document and just tell me if you've seen it before or not.
Don't think I have.
Okay. You responded to Mr. Rasmussen that you looked at other manufacturers to see if they made the same thing or they were different or something like that, right?
Yeah, I looked at a few other manufacturers of ORP.
Would I be correct that some manufacturers of ORP meters have meters that take negative readings behind, right out of the box without this preconditioning? Would I be correct in that?
I didn't use any of the other meters, so I don't know how they all work.
Okay, your answer now is you don't know?
I said I
You don't
didn't
know the answer to that question?
I said I don't use any. I haven't used any other meters, so I.
Do you know the answer to my question as to whether or not other meters, you just stick the probe in, it takes negative readings right out of the box without conditioning vinegar for 2 days, 4 days, 10 days? Do you know the answer to that question?
I don't.
Okay. Could I have his deposition, please? Doctor, this is your deposition taken in this case. Would you take a look at pages 122.18 through 123.2 and just read it to yourself?
Can you please repeat that?
122, line 18.
Yep.
Okay. Shane, can you play that, please?
Okay, so when they're trying to sell a product, the discontinued solution,
Shane, that's not right. It's 122.18 from 123.2.
That was my 122.
Got it? Okay, let's try again.
so the Hanna one and the American Monitor one that we have here as Exhibit 8 and 9 will read negative orc readings out of the box without oxidizing. Is that correct? As I understood it, yes, that they were both, were, essentially right away, just putting it in whatever solution you wanted to test. I think the American Marine one had a range of minus 2,000 plus 2,000.
So this Hanna one that we have in the catalog and the American Marine one, you don't have to go through this oxidizing in vinegar. Works right out of the box, right? That's what you said.
Yeah, I guess it does. Again, I'm not a chemist person.
Okay, so knowing that some ort meters work right out of the box to take negative readings, and some don't work right out of the box, i.e. the MW500, you think that when you have one that doesn't work without conditioning, you should tell the user that in the user manual?
Again, I was focused on how Real Water was using the product, and they were.
It's not focused on how real water uses product. Do you think if you have two different kinds of ort meters, one that works fine out of the box to take negative readings, and one that you've got to stick the probe in vinegar for 5 days to take negative readings, you think they ought to alert the user to that in the user manual?
One way to do it, it's part of the information that needs to be given to the end user.
So is that a yes to my question? They should put that in the user manual?
They can, I don't know if they have to.
Okay. Well, Hanna makes the one that measures negative ort right out of the box. They know that they have ort meters that measure right out of the box. They, all people, should put it in the user manual. Should they not?
That is a Milwaukee product.
It was in Milwaukee. Do you understand that this product was actually made by Hanna? Distributed by, you don't have any knowledge of that?
I don't know exactly what the.
Okay. So assuming for the sake of argument that a Hanna entity was the one that made the user manual, and Hanna knows that some ort meters measure negative right out of the box, assuming those two things, they should have put that information in this user manual, shouldn't they?
They can, I guess, I don't know if they have to.
Well, they should, because that would allow users to differentiate between the better ort meters, the ones that can take readings right out of the box, and the other ort meters that you have to condition for 5 days. They should tell people that, right?
I don't really have an opinion. I don't know if they have to. Just they can or they cannot. The information is being transmitted.
Okay, I'm not asking if someone holds a gun to their head and says you have to do it. They should do it to have a good warning, right?
Objection, this calls for an expert opinion outside the scope of this expert. He's not a chemist.
Judge, this is,
I'll overrule.
Doctor,
I'm sorry, can you?
should they put in a user manual that the ort meter doesn't take negative readings without conditioning when they know that there are other ort meters that will? Should they tell people that?
Objection, compound.
Overrule.
It's an option for them. I don't know if they should or they should not.
Would the user manual provide more information if they did that?
There would be more information in there, yes.
Is there any reason not to provide a user more information?
If you think they might do something incorrectly with it, or they might mislead them or give them a misunderstanding.
And that was the problem with the meter in this case. You had to put the probe in vinegar for 4 or 5 days to get negative readings, right? That was the problem.
But I'm sorry, what the problem with what?
The problem with the probe was to get it to work for negative, you had to put it in vinegar for 4 or 5 days. That was the problem.
But that's what the Real Water people were doing. They were putting it in the.
Oh, you think the Real Water people were putting it in vinegar for 4 to 5 days? Is that what you're telling the jury? Do you think that's what they were doing?
As I understood it, they were putting the probe into, they were aware of this conditioning process, putting it in the vinegar beforehand, and then putting it back after they've done it.
And you haven't seen Mr. Jones's YouTube video where he references put it in vinegar for 5 minutes? You haven't seen that?
I've seen part of that video.
Shane, can you pop that up, please? Right there, they thought you were supposed to put it in vinegar for 5 minutes, not 5 days, correct?
That's what that says, yes.
And that's also what Mr. Bush testified he thought, the production manager, right? 5 minutes, not 5 days. That's what he thought.
I'm not sure if I remember Mr. Bush's definition.
Okay? If you don't tell them how long to oxidize it in the user manual, that could create customer confusion, right?
It's possible, but again, at the end of the day, looking at how the information was communicated, that's what they were doing.
Well, Real Water wasn't the only customer confused, were they? There were dozens of customers confused about this exact point, right?
Yeah, but I was really just looking at it in terms of how Milwaukee's products were dealt with Real Water.
Well, literally dozens of customers wrote emails asking about the oxidization, how to do it. Did they not? Dozens.
Yeah, I saw people writing in on a customer service line or whatever.
So if Real Water was confused, or not told, customers are confused, don't you agree that a responsible manufacturer would clear up the confusion by putting something in the user manual?
Again, that's one approach.
What better approach than to tell the users how to do it in a user manual? What better approach is there than that?
There's still not a guarantee that if it's in the user manual, that it's the information is going to get through. People still might have questions. That's why they call about, hey, I have a problem with this, even if it's something that's in the user manual.
You should at least put it, there's no reason not to put it in the user manual, right?
Not that I know of.
All right. And if you don't condition it, it's a problem because it takes hours to days to take negative readings, right?
Again, I'm not a chemistry person, so I don't know how long it takes to do this.
Well, you saw Mr. Brown's testimony on that point, didn't you?
I saw that. I had also seen that he had talked about it working both positive and negative out of the box.
Okay, why don't we play Brown's video, Shane, 45 through 6, 46 through 15, and see what he said.
In other words, a Kangen water customer can take it out of the box and start measuring negative orb of Kangen water, correct?
They can, but to get a negative reading, it's a slow process without oxidizing the probe. So, in other words, it will read negative RP, but it's going to take a long time to get that negative reading they're looking for without oxidizing the probe.
Well, you say it's going to take a long time before.
I don't have a specific time out of the box of how long it will take to read negative ORP to the degree of measuring Kangen water. But it will read negative ORP out of the box. It just takes a lot longer to get that read.
How much longer?
I don't know.
Days, months? What are we talking?
Hours to days is what I would say.
That's a problem, isn't it, that users should be told about? That if they don't put it in the conditioning solution for 4 or 5 days, it's not going to work for negative readings or hours or days. That's a problem that they should be told about.
So he said he didn't know, and
I didn't say Mr. Brown didn't know. This is Jason Brown, he's the Milwaukee employee, right? Okay. They should tell users that, right?
right, but it's going to depend on what you're testing. It could be, different products require different things, and from my reading of the testimony of Mr. Aiken, he said he put it in, he waited for a couple minutes or whatever to get a stable reading, and that's the number he got.
Well, Mr. Aikens testified that he wasn't even the one that conditioned the meter. He didn't do that. That wasn't his job. Recall that testimony?
But he was the one doing the measurement.
He was the one that used the meter, but he wasn't the one that prepared the meter, was he?
Right, but he'd know how long it would take to get the reading, because he's the one doing the measurement.
Okay. Let's skip up. And Shane, we're going to page 8. Shane, you with me? I'm not telling you bothering you. With me?
Just throw me under the bus.
I want to get you 1 minute here, right? So you've already said that you don't think this user manual should have instructions on how to exercise the probe before like this. You've already said that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to, it's in this.
Okay, would I be correct that other user manuals do contain that information?
I know a couple of the other ones talk about negative readings, some do, some don't. I don't remember exactly what the language is in those other ones.
Okay, why don't you look at your deposition pages 15, 16 through 16.3, please, and read it to yourself. You with me, sir?
Yep, I'm reading.
Shane, could you play that one too, please?
What way do manufacturers typically provide information with regards to calibration and or oxidization in user manuals? It does seem like they do provide some information about calibration. I didn't hear the other part of the question. Oxidization of probes. They do talk about the probes as well, yes. Okay, so and let's leave Milwaukee out of it for now. So other manufacturers provide information in their user manuals with regards to how to oxidize probes, correct?
So some manufacturers,
So some of them do, some of them don't.
so some manufacturers do put it in a user manual, right?
Yeah, like I said, I think some do, some don't.
Okay. So Milwaukee could have done it, they just didn't do it.
Right, they have this tip card that provided that information and it was communicated.
Well, that's not the real reason they didn't put it in the user manual, is it?
I don't know what the reason.
Well, isn't it true that the real reason that they didn't put the information in the user manual is that it was 35 years old?
Objection calls for speculation.
Isn't that true?
No foundation as to how old it is. What?
I'm overruling.
We'll find out.
I don't know what the reason was.
Jane, will you take a look, first of all, sir, will you take a look at 21:15 through 19? Read that yourself. Shane, can you play that, please?
All right, but he says, why don't we start with the 80s? So how old would this manual be then? 2023. Right, theoretically could be up to 43 years old.
Okay, I said 35, I apologize. It's really 43 years old. Is that right?
I don't.
That's what you said.
It said it could be up to 43 years old. You asked if it was made in 1980. And it's
Okay, so
2023.
the reason that this user manual doesn't contain this type of information that other ORP manufacturers put in their user manuals, the reason is that it's 43 years old. Is that right?
Objection, Mike's foundation.
That's a good question, Ron.
Yeah, I get it. I was just saying as far as time period's concerned, but you can rephrase it.
Is the reason that this user manual does not have the oxidation information in it is that it was old. They didn't change it. It's an old user manual.
I don't know if that's the reason. No.
Well, what is the reason? What is the reason that they didn't put user information in the user manual?
I don't know. I don't work for Milwaukee. I didn't make them.
Okay? Okay. And I think you've already said you aren't familiar with the testimony of Milwaukee employees about the meter giving inconsistent readings. You didn't look at Diego and Minigana's deposition, for example?
I did not.
Okay. So you don't know one way or the other what they said?
I think you had asked me about it during my deposition. I didn't really review his testimony.
Okay. And it is true that the real water employees testified that if they had been told to put it in vinegar for 4 to 5 days to oxidize, they would have followed that instruction. That is true, right?
I don't remember, but it could be. I just don't remember.
Okay. You want to take a look? Shane, can you show Mr. Bush 8217 through 22?
Right. If they had told you to put in vinegar 4 to 5 days, you would have done that, correct? Yes, I would have. But you didn't do that because your understanding was 4 to 5 minutes, right? That's right.
Mr. Bush, an Army veteran, no reason to believe he wouldn't have followed instructions if they'd been put in the user manual.
Oh, yeah, he said he would.
You don't doubt that. So the problem, I think you're finally agreeing with me that the problem is that they didn't put the information in the user manual, right? That's the problem.
The problem with what?
The problem with them not knowing how to oxidize the probes. You didn't, or excuse me, Milwaukee didn't put that information in the user manual. That's the problem, right?
But they were aware of what was in the tip card and they were implementing it. They knew about putting it in.
The tip card doesn't say 4 to 5 days, does it?
Does not.
Does it? Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Martin?
I'll be brief. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, Fortenbaugh. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. So I only have really 2 areas of questions to ask you. Product labels and stickers, maybe 3. You're familiar with that, correct? Product labels or stickers?
Yes.
Okay, there was a question earlier today, can't remember which juror, I think it's juror number 3, Ms. Love. May have asked this question about warnings on the actual meter. Are you familiar with companies that actually put warnings on a product?
Yes, some products have on-product labels or warnings and then some don't.
And is that beneficial in the event the owner's manual or tip card is misplaced?
It can be. I mean, it doesn't have, there's usually, not enough real estate on a product to put all the stuff that's in the owner's manual, user manual on the product itself.
But on this product, you simply could have put a sticker saying oxidize before use, right?
You could put that there, but that doesn't give enough information.
Okay, how much information is necessary?
Well, it says it needs to be oxidized if you're doing the negative ORP reading, but if you're doing something positive, then you don't have to do that. So it could be some confusion. If I'm trying to do something positive, measure something that's a positive ORP and it says oxidized, maybe I'm not supposed to do that, or I don't have to do that.
Okay, so if you're using it for negative ORP readings, you could put on a sticker, oxidize for negative ORP readings.
Could do that, but I mean, that's just not what's.
That's not what they did.
That's not what they did and not what other manufacturers have done either.
All right. You've heard of best practices, correct?
Yes.
All right. And can you tell the jury what best practices means in this environment?
Yeah, again, kind of like in the development of warnings instructions, like I said, looking at the available standards, looking at what other manufacturers do for making their products. If there are federal regulations involved, stuff like that, looking through all that kind of stuff to get an idea of, okay, this is kind of what everybody else is doing, this is the way to do it, that's best practice.
Isn't it fair to say that it's a best practice if you have the information in your tip card to also have it in your owner's manual? Isn't that best practice?
It could be, but it doesn't have to be, and it depends.
Sir, let me ask you one more time. Isn't it a best practice to have the information in the owner's manual as well as the tip card?
It can be, but it doesn't have to be. There's different ways that people present information from manufacturers to get the information to their users.
Do you remember being deposed in this case? Do you remember that question being asked of you?
Yes.
And didn't you say at your deposition that it is best practice to have it in the tip card and the owner's manual?
I don't remember exactly what I said. It could be a good way to do it, but it's not the only way.
I didn't say only, I said best. That is the best way, isn't it? Isn't that true?
It could serve a good function to do that, but at the end of the day, you want to measure how effective the warning is, and is it getting across?
It's best practice because it provides uniformity in what you're doing, both on the owner's manual and the tip card, correct?
It would.
Thank you. And you've realized, because of your evaluation of this case, that Hanna and Hanna and Milwaukee didn't follow best practices in terms of having the information in owner's manual and the tip card, correct?
They didn't have it in both places, but they did other companies.
Thank you. And then finally, Doctor, isn't it true that if you find there to be misunderstandings, perhaps in the use or the application of a product, that best practices promotes updating your owner's manual or your tip cards?
It really depends on what the problem is that people are having, or some misuse or some misunderstanding about something. Maybe update it, maybe you don't.
Right, but if there are misunderstandings, and in this case, we had 18 to 20 inconsistent readings that Mr. Menegata talked about, 12 customer inquiries about how to oxidize the probe, that sort of misunderstandings could be addressed in a owner's manual or tip card update, correct?
It could be addressed, but that's just one way to evaluate it. It's not necessarily a guarantee.
Something that should be considered when you're seeing those misunderstandings, correct?
Something to consider, but not necessarily implement.
Isn't it fair to say that based upon your evaluation, that was never considered by Hanna or Milwaukee? You didn't see a single document considering those misunderstandings, correct?
I don't think I saw any documents.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Put this again, but this is what I do say, that all of your opinions given today have been done to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty for the field that you're in, which is warnings and instructions?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. Hold on. One of them has to do with the sticker, and I thought it was a great question as well. What would happen if you put adhesive, if you know, onto the probe itself? If you put adhesive on that and a piece of paper so you could read that, could that affect the usefulness of that probe, because it's a scientific instrument and you may not get good readings because I've now contaminated whatever solution I put this into with this little sticker on there that's going to have things in there?
Your Honor, let me just check. He's leading the witness number one. Number two, he's already said he's not a chemist. Thank you.
All right. You said that on the card it says it has to be oxidized in distilled vinegar from the tip card for 48 hours. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
So if Mr. Akins or Mr. Mendigana had a tip card, or were trained on how to do the tip card, if the probe was stored in vinegar when it's not in use, that means every hour that it's not in use, it's being oxidized, correct?
So I understand it, yeah.
Okay. So if it stays overnight, I've gone at least 24 hours for sure, but if I get a new one and I put it into storage of vinegar immediately, and I wait 2 days, that's 48 hours. Correct. Have you seen any testimony that someone did not do that?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about revisions. Do you know how many revisions that this Milwaukee instruction card went through?
I don't know, but I know just looking at the difference between this one here and the one that was shown up there, they're not exactly the same.
You don't know how many revisions they've gone through to make sure that things are better understood, do you?
No.
Using the meter would have to depend on the application for the meter, what you're measuring, correct?
Right, so when you're making a product and making instructions for it, you want to know who's the intended user and what are they using it for. In this case, Milwaukee is making a thing that a lot of different things for different applications, measure the aquarium water, the river water, or whatever, so it's a lot of different applications.
And in the end, it's still just measuring electrical voltage, correct?
Right, it just gives you a number, what, positive 220 or negative 220 or whatever.
Okay. Is it your opinion that this tip card, along with that operator's manual, along with the information on the box, was sufficient enough to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on the deposition testimonies that you've reviewed and seen that real water was following every instruction in this tip card?
Yeah.
Did you have testimony that real water employees used vinegar?
Yes.
Did they use the vinegar to store the probe?
Yeah.
Did you get photographs from site inspections that were taken during the discovery in this case?
Yes.
Did you review those photographs?
Yes.
I think I've already shown this to the plaintiffs and everyone else, and there's been no objection, so could we please put up on the screen 7181?
No. It's not officially admitted yet.
Is there any objection to admitting this?
No.
May I move for admission of this, Your Honor?
Exhibit number, please.
7181. I'm gonna hand it to you. Thank you, Tori, for helping me. Dr. Fortenbaugh, I'm gonna show you what has been marked as exhibit 7181. I think I got that right. Do you know what this is?
It says distilled white vinegar.
Did you review this photograph as a part of the documents you saw in this discovery, in this case?
Yeah, I think it was from inspection photographs, like a site inspection.
What is this a photograph of?
The distilled white vinegar bottle,
Do you know where this photograph came from?
some real water facility.
So this was at the Henderson facility at Real Water. They had distilled white vinegar, correct?
Yep.
And there has been testimony by Real Water employees, they used vinegar.
Judge, he's been waiting for 5 questions.
That's right.
How's this stuff we're wrapping up?
I am, this is just done, but I will.
Let's rephrase. That's all.
That's all. Has there been testimony about the use of white distilled vinegar by Real Water employees?
Yes.
And what did they say with regard to the use of white distilled vinegar?
That's what they were storing the probe in, they weren't using.
And they were following the instructions on the tip card as far as storing it in white distilled vinegar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have all of your opinions today, testimony that's been given to this jury, again, were they to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty in warnings and labeling and instructions and those sort of things?
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
No.
No. All right, serve and release.
All right, if I can approach, I'll get the deposition transcript back to the deposition.
There's other stuff.
Thank you. Tori, this is the deposition.
Thank you. And the manual and the meter back.
Yes, I'll give it to you right now. I'll put,
Was the meter on?
yep, I've got it right here coming. Will, are these yours?
Yeah.
Sorry. Just trying to clean up. I'm John York, just trying to clean up.
All right. Can we approach? You're welcome, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things I want to inform you of. Number one, it's my understanding one of our panelists has to go to the doctor at 4:30. And you're gonna make it. We're not in a rush, right? Because that's really important. I just want to be sure you understand that. Secondly, tomorrow we're gonna start at 9:15. But tomorrow we'll be done with testing. Right? We're gonna be done with testimony. And so what we're gonna do is this, and I try to, I really am, and I try to, and we talked about this when I first met you. I'm concerned about your time. I'm concerned about you sitting there when you could be doing something else, right? And so I anticipate this is what will happen tomorrow. And tomorrow, it's my understanding, we'll have some more video deposition testimony. We might have one more live witness or two, I'm not sure. But I feel fairly confident that tomorrow will be probably, as far as closing the case from an evidentiary perspective, probably early, right? And then I'll discharge you. And so what's going to probably happen is this: Monday morning at 9:15, we'll come in and we'll have closing arguments. Is that about right, counsel?
Yes, sir. Sure.
All right, so what I'm saying is we're actually getting to where we need to be, right? And so I just wanted to let you know that. And so what we'll do right now, I'll go ahead and read the admonishment if I can find it. Thank you, ma'am. And tomorrow morning, 9:15, safe trip to the doctor. And ladies and gentlemen, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report of our commentary on the trial or any verses connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Snapchat, or to phone express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And so anyway, tomorrow morning at 9:15.
9:15, Your Honor. All rise for the court to adjourn. Jury is clear. Please be seated.
All right. You know what I'm thinking right now? I mean, I could probably anticipate everyone kind of agrees. I think that's a little fatigued.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're all a little fatigued.
Yes.
Yes. Right?
Yes, we are. Sorry.
Right?
Hopefully we didn't have to start right away at 9:15. I wasn't feeling great.
No, but we want to get that out of the way, because what I want to do after we're done, I want to finalize everything. That's what I want to do. And just as important too, I want to let you leave for the day. And I realize it's 3:45. It's 3:45. Yeah. But you know what, that extra hour would be good to get you home. But tomorrow, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna finalize everything after the test. And then we'll be done, and then Monday morning, we'll have to, hopefully, we'll have closing arguments, and we'll get a verdict, and we'll see exactly where we're at, if there's a phase 2 or not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All rise. Part of 16 is now in session. Honorable Timothy Williams presides. Please be seated.
Tell me, where are we at right now?
Mr. Rasmussen, Mr. Robbins, myself just spent last hour and 15 minutes going through 2 volumes of Casey Aiken, and we're in agreement on everything, and it's being fed into the plate machine. Yeah.
Okay, it's being calibrated right now, is that the best way to say?
Your PMK is done, Your Honor.
Okay, we're ready to go with one for sure.
Yeah, the first one I think probably lasts the longest, right?
All right, great.
Yeah. So we can.
We'll keep working up 2 more while that's being viewed.
Okay. And I don't think we've set forth our appearances yet, have we?
Oh,
No, Will Kemp, Eric Pepperman, and Theodore Parker.
So we'll do that, Kaufman, Will Water, Energy Lifestyle, Common, Will Water, will be
Scott Rasmussen and Ryan Flanagan on behalf of Hanna Instruments.
Morning, Your Honor. Rob Robbins from Milwaukee Instruments.
Judge, anyway, we've got no vacant, so we hope to start planning for the jury, then we sneak out Mr. Rasmussen's running.
We've got enough.
Yeah, we created, yeah, Plaintiffs, I'm sorry. And we finish the last one, which is Anthony Brown. Which will take 5 minutes. Which will take 5 minutes, but we might as well do it.
Yeah, let's get it done.
All right, okay, and before we go, just one second, you may be seated. Any other things you need to talk about as far as that's concerned?
No, you're not.
All right. Anyway, I just want to, because we have to move this case along, right? We have to get things done. And here's my point, and we had one issue hanging regarding the implied warranty fitness for a particular purpose in jury instruction, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give the instruction, and I'm going to tell you why. And the reason why I think this is important, I got to tell you why. Anything I do, I'm going to tell you why. And I did take a look at NRS 104.2318, and to me, this is persuasive as it pertains to the official comment section. And I don't mind saying this, I probably digged a little deeper than the lawyer in this issue. Yeah. But if you take a look at the comment, this is the first thing comment 3 says. And I don't mind saying it, if you really take a look at the UCC as it pertains to this subsection, and as it's set forth, there's actually, how do they frame it? Because there's sections A, B, and C. We adopted section A, right? And I mean, I just wanted to, I looked at everything. But to me, if you take a look at the official comment, and this is what the comment says. It says, quote, "This section expressly includes as beneficiaries within the provisions the family, household, and guest of the purchaser." But this is where the rubber meets the road. It really does. It says the following. Beyond this section is neutral and is not intended to enlarge or restrict the developing case law on whether the seller's warranties given to his buyer who resells extends to other persons in the distribution chain, close quote. That says it all, right? And here's my point, and this is important to point out too, because I think this is often overlooked in the development of strict products liability. And I'm going way back to Prosser and Keaton, right? And this is a quote straight out of it. I can give you the site. It's W. Prosser and P. Keaton, Law of Torts, Section 92, 5th edition, 1984. And also 3R Anderson, Uniform Commercial Code, Section 2.314. I think that's colon 5 at 154, 1983. And this is my point. This is general. It says the theories of strict liability and implied warranty are intertwined, right? And so before the courts adopted strict products liability, the only recourse for plaintiffs were implied warranty cases.
Your versus McPherson.
Right, and so we can't overlook that, and this is how it goes. But it goes a little further. It says, let me see here. Just want to make sure I get this. I think this is Victorson v. Brock Laundry Machine Company. It's 37 New York 2nd, 395 at 402. And I think an additional site would be 335 Northeast 2nd, 275 at 278. And it says strict products liability is simply an implied warranty action. That's what the law says, right? And here's my point. And looking at it, at the end of the day, and going back to this specific case, and I think it sums it up at the very end, Section 104.2318 is not intended to enlarge or restrict the case law. It's not for that purpose. And as to whether or not a buyer who resells extends to other persons in the distribution chain. And here we have buyers and members of the buyer's family that ingested real water, right? And here's a really good example. I thought about it.
No, Your Honor.
What do you mean?
They didn't buy our meters.
No,
That's not
but
the
no.
fact. They
Wait.
bought
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Yes, you can.
I mean, because do I cut anybody off?
No, Your Honor.
Right, and here's my point, if I follow that line of logic, if you had a motor vehicle accident case involving allegations of defective brakes on a vehicle, that would stand for the proposition that if the kid, the family member, who was driving their parents' car, wanted to sue a major auto manufacturer and also the manufacturer of the brakes, they couldn't sue the manufacturer of the brakes, and they would be limited only to the car manufacturer. Right?
Right, Your Honor, I think that's what Giovanni stands for, bystander liability and strict liability.
Right. And that's the next thing I was gonna say, because if you follow that line of logic in a strict products liability action, and also in a breach of the implied warranties, that because the son, the member or daughter of the household, was involved in a unfortunate event where there's allegations of a defective brake system that was manufactured and designed from someone else, you couldn't sue them, because there's no privity. Right? And I don't think the law says that. And that's my point, Mr. Robbins. And I thought about that. So anyway, and the reason why I did this is this. I mean, I went a little bit beyond the briefing, I don't mind saying that. But that's my decision, and I made a record on it, and the Supreme Court will have to grapple with the language from Section 3, where it was expressly stated to include beneficiaries within its provisions of family and household and guests of the purchaser, right? And it says, beyond this, the section is neutral and is not intended to enlarge or restrict the developing case law on whether seller's warranties given to his buyer who resells extend to other persons in the distribution chain. And so all I'm saying is this, it extends. Nothing more, nothing less.
And I think there were two juries.
Can I make a record on that?
Oh, you can.
Just, just to add that I don't believe that the Ordinators component part is a completely separate product. It's not incorporated into their bottled water. That's number one, and I don't think there's been a sudden accident, such as the steering wheel case, where they don't make the plaintiff go back and try to figure out which part made that steering wheel seize up. I don't think we have those facts in this case, so for that reason, I don't believe it is appropriate. So thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Judge Epstein, I thought we had two jury instructions on this, but we don't have them in front. Maybe I can.
I just wanted, when we go to settle this afternoon, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have to have that discussion, because I don't mind telling you this, I wanted to really dig a little deeper. And I read a couple law reviews, and some cases, and I looked at the comments, and I learned, I did a little, I educated myself on the 3 different comments, A, B, and C, to the UCC Article 2, specifically regarding Section 318, I think is what it is. Yes, 318 under Article 2 of the UCC, and I did that. I looked at case law, and the reason why I think it's important to really discuss it on the record, because it's easy to forget why implied warranties are there in personal injury actions. And this was pre-strict liability development, and it's overlooked. And it's like Prosser said, they're intertwined.
Yeah, I think it was a tool in the toolbox that people aren't using anymore.
Yeah.
That's really the way I look at it.
And probably true, but my point is, I wanted to take a closer look, not just rely upon the briefing, and I just wanted to make a record, so this is an important issue from the appellate perspective from the Supreme Court. They at least know, well, Judge Williams didn't make the decision arbitrarily. He actually looked at the comment, he looked at Prosser, on torts, he looked at some other cases, and so on, and he gave an example. Nothing more, nothing less. And Mr. Robbins, I respect your position, sir.
Thank you.
Where do we go now?
Your Honor, we're going to play the depositions of Blaine Jones. We will finish off in the anteroom during that, or in whatever way is agreeable. to the other two depositions to be played. I think Mr. Robbins is going to be introducing the deposition of Anthony Brown. My witness that will be live does have a late afternoon flight, so right after lunch is when I'm probably gonna have to put him on now, okay?
So we interrupt wherever we're at.
Sorry.
We'll accommodate you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
Rob Robbins. I really think, I know we want to get the jury in here, but I really think if Mr. Kemp and Mr. Rasmussen just takes 5 more minutes, then I don't have, him and I don't have to go out, the jury doesn't have to figure out why we're leaving.
It's one of these things, I'll be honest with you, if you agree, I agree.
I would just like to get it over with.
Everyone agrees.
You want to do that?
I'm gonna step down. If I'll spend 5 more minutes to save a half hour.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
I wouldn't have figured that.
We're on the record now.
On the record. Are we ready to continue?
Yes, Your Honor, I think we are.
All right, can we bring the jury in?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's mine.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what do we have, a videotape, how long?
It's about 45 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Just ready to do it on one of them, yep.
all right. And so should we do the one video and then break?
Probably, and then bring in the live.
Live witness, if that's okay.
That's fine. That's the best way to handle it, right?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Okay. Then after the live witness, how many more witnesses do we have?
We have,
Another video?
we have another video, two videos, three, but the one is, I think Mr. Robbins will be introduced in one video.
And any idea how long those 3 videos are?
Yes, Your Honor. It'll be 30 minutes, 16 minutes, and 18 minutes.
All right.
So far.
So far, that's fine. It can be adjusted.
All right. And we'll look at it, well, my progress.
And I will say this, talking to the marshal, I think we have a happy jury. From what I gather. So they're not frustrated.
It is Friday.
It is Friday.
Your Honor, there's one thing outside the presence, if you want to take care of it right now, and then we can,
If we can do it quickly.
I think so, you just gotta read, there's a certain part of deposition for Anthony Brown, we can do it at lunch or now, whatever you want.
Whenever.
Let's do it right after we let it go over the lunch.
Okay.
Whenever you want to do it, it's fine.
That's fine.
Because we have.
I just want to eat today.
Yeah, from what I gather, they should be out of here by 2:30-ish, 3 o'clock,
This is our chemist expert, so it may take,
3:30.
yeah, their cross-examination may take a while.
Yeah, I got you.
I assume it'll be about the same as what we had yesterday.
All rise for the jury. Please be seated. Thank you.
All right, we want to stipulate to the presence of the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Carter, Hanna Instruments Inc. calls somebody with the testimony, Blaine Jones.
Thank you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say good morning.
Good morning.
And there was a brief delay. What the lawyers are doing, just so you understand, they were actually working on condensing some of the video testimony in order to save time. Is that correct, now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so they have saved time. And although it took time to do that, it saves time on the back end, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, just want to let you know. So it's my understanding the next, we'll have a approximate 45-minute video.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and then we'll break for lunch. All right.
Could you please state and spell your name for the record? Blaine Jones, B-L-A-I-N-J-O-N-E-S. When did you first begin working for Real Water? I believe it was back in 2008. And was Real Water already founded at that time?
Yes.
In his deposition, Mr. Marlowe testified that he physically taught you how to make the concentrate. Is that right?
As well as my father, Brian Jones, yes.
Okay. Approximately when did Mr. Marlowe first teach you?
I would say it was probably around 2011, 2012 maybe.
And then after he taught you, did Mr. Marlowe continue to make concentrate and provide it to Real Water, or did you take over that function?
I took over that function for the most part with his guidance, yes.
Prior to Mr. Marlowe teaching you this process, had you had any personal experience with respect to manufacturing bottled drinking water, food, or any other beverages?
Yes.
With Real Water before you took over the function of making the concentrate?
Yes.
Other than that, did you have any prior training experience?
Making bottled water?
Yes.
No.
Prior to your work with Real Water, did you have any education, training, or experience in chemistry?
Yes.
What was that?
College courses, as well as high school.
And how many courses?
Various. I don't recall the specific amount, to be honest with you.
Any other training, education, or experience in chemistry?
No.
What about with water purification?
Prior to when exactly is your question?
Prior to joining Real Water?
No.
Prior to joining Real Water, did you have any training or experience with respect to using water testing equipment?
Prior to Real Water?
Yes.
No.
In his deposition, Mr. Marlowe testified that when he taught you the formula for making the concentrate, there may have been some observation by your father, Brent Jones. Do you recall that?
Yes.
At any time after Mr. Marlowe passed on the function of making the concentrate, did Brent Jones make the Real Water concentrate?
Yes.
How often, generally?
A few times over the years.
Have you ever taught anyone else how to make the Real Water concentrate?
There was various employees that were included in the full process. Different parts broken up, I guess, in the entire process.
It's my understanding that the concentrate making process that Mr. Marlowe licensed to Real Water was proprietary and secret. Is that right?
My understanding.
Mr. Marlowe testified that the concentrate making process generally involved chemical additives and electrolysis with so-called titanium tubes. Is that consistent with what you were doing?
The process that I was taught was to add minerals to filtered water and perform electrolysis.
And you perform the electrolysis with these so-called titanium tubes, is that correct?
Yes.
If you could take a look at Exhibit 2 and 3 in your deposition. Are these exhibits pictures of some of the titanium tubes that you were using for the electrolysis?
I can't say for sure if those are ones that I used, but they look similar.
How many different titanium tubes did Real Water have?
I don't recall exactly.
Where were they kept?
In the Desert Inn facility.
Where in the Desert Inn facility?
In the, one of the rooms in the back production area of the warehouse.
And do you have any general idea of how many there were?
Over the many years from 2011-12 to 2019, anywhere 10 maybe or so.
And would eventually the titanium tubes no longer work for your purposes?
I would be speculating. I wasn't the expert. John Marlowe was the expert in regards to that.
Did you ever dispose of any of the titanium tubes?
I did not.
For the purposes of generally describing the concentrate manufacturing process, the water was in the same tank we see in Exhibit 13, and you would put the potassium in the opening that we see attached to the tank, correct?
Yes.
And then after you put the potassium chloride in, you would give it time to dissolve. And just to be clear, you did not do any type of mixing, correct?
No.
You didn't run a pump or anything?
At the time, no.
Okay. How long would you wait in terms of giving it time to dissolve?
Estimate, I would say maybe 5 minutes.
And how did you know that enough time had passed that it dissolved?
The liquid would be, the water would be clear.
So when you first put it in, it would be cloudy, and then after you let it dissolve, it would be clear.
Yes.
Okay, then what would you do next?
Would run the water through the tubes, the electrolysis tubes.
Okay, so after adding the potassium chloride, letting it dissolve, the next step is the electrolysis part, correct?
Correct.
And for the electrolysis, you would use the titanium tubes, correct?
Correct.
What is your understanding about how the titanium tubes work?
I have a very limited understanding, to be honest with you. I would refer you to John as the inventor.
Do you know where the titanium tubes came from?
I do not, other than John.
So if I were to ask you to draw what the inside of the titanium tube looked like, would you be able to do that?
I would not.
Now we refer to them as titanium tubes. Is that how they were referred to by you and Real Water?
Tubes.
Tubes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if they're made of titanium or anything else?
I don't specifically know what they're made of.
When you were using the tubes to perform the electrolysis step, how many would you use at a given time?
Generally, how I was shown to set up the setup was with two.
Two. Do you know whether two is required for the process?
I don't know. I would refer you to John.
Did you ever use more than two tubes to make the concentrate?
I don't recall specifically.
Did you ever use less than two tubes?
I don't recall specifically.
Okay, so describe the process of what you do. What's the setup?
The filtered water with the potassium chloride would then go through the tubes for the electrolysis, and the water on one side would then be transferred to the tank. The other side would go down the drain.
So the water, it goes through the titanium tubes and it exits through two different tubing at the end of the titanium tube?
The end of the tube, yes.
And one tube goes into a container to preserve, and one tube goes into the drain to dispose of it?
Yes.
Do you know what the difference is between the water that's being preserved, or the solution that's being preserved versus the solution that's being disposed of?
Other than one being negatively charged and one being positively charged, the extent of my understanding.
What is the solution that was being preserved?
The negatively charged.
Okay. So, looking at exhibits 2 and 3 of the two titanium tubes. We see a picture of the tubes with kind of different tubing attached to the ends. Is that right?
Looks like that in the picture, yes.
Okay. Is that how the setup looked when you were performing the electrolysis? No. What did it look like?
It was set up with a holder, I guess, if you will.
Okay. Like some sort of rack?
Yes.
And what would you use the rack for?
Holding the tubes.
The tubes themselves?
Yes.
If you could take a look at exhibit 7. Is this a picture of the rack that you used?
Looks like it, yes.
Okay. And how would you attach the tubes, the titanium tubes?
They fit within those holders there.
Like it looks like clamps of some sort?
Yeah.
Okay. And they're held up, and how is this rack held up somehow?
Yes.
Do you hold it with your hand?
No.
How is it held up?
It would mount into the wall or the ceiling or something else to suspend it, I guess you would say. Towards the top there you can see a screw, bolt, threaded portion of that rack.
Okay. And so looking back at exhibit 3, for example, of the titanium tubes with the plastic tubing attached, was the plastic tubing depicted in this exhibit used as part of the process?
I can't say for sure by looking at the picture.
How did the water get from the tank to the titanium tube?
Through various plumbing.
So the water would be pumped from the tanks that we looked at through plumbing to some sort of inlet attached to the tube?
Yes.
How do you know which is the positive and which is the negative side?
John showed me. I don't recall specifically how it was set up. He helped me set it up in the very beginning, and I kind of just never touched it after that.
Was there some sort of indication on which side's the positive, which side's the negative?
He indicated, John did.
Okay, he just showed you?
Yeah, he showed.
And the tubes were always just, one went to the drain and one went to a container?
Correct.
My understanding is that you had to electrify the tubes, correct?
There was electricity used in the electrolysis step.
Okay. How did you utilize electricity in the electrolysis step?
There was a small black box used.
If you could take a look at Exhibit 4. Is that the electrical source you're referring to?
Looks similar to the one that John provided, yes.
So if we look at Exhibits 8 and 9, these depict a gas mask and yellow rubber gloves that were photographed at the Henderson facility. When you made the concentrate, did you wear the gas mask and gloves shown in these exhibits?
I wore the personal protective equipment recommended by the manufacturer of the minerals.
Did that include the gas mask in Exhibit 8?
Yes. For eye and respiratory protection.
Does that include the rubber gloves depicted in Exhibit 9?
I wore a pair of gloves similar to those, yes.
Does the PPE include anything other than the gas mask and gloves?
I believe for the minerals, that was the extent, was eye, respiratory, and physical contact protection. But I would refer you back to those specific instructions from the manufacturer of the minerals.
So you read the instructions from the manufacturer of the minerals with respect to the PPE, and you did what the instructions provide.
Correct.
Okay. And if the instructions had provided additional warnings or admonitions, is it your general practice to follow those? And then when you pumped the electrolyzed negatively charged solution to the empty tank that originally contained the purified water, the second tank would then be empty, right?
No, because it would be transferred from the first tank to the second tank. And then I would take it from the second tank and transfer it to the first tank.
And then the second tank would be empty after you transfer
After that, yes.
And then what would you do with it from the first tank?
So in that step of the process, I would then take the contents after the second round of electrolysis and put it into storage containers.
What do you mean two? Are there two electrolysis stages?
Yeah. So I would start with 300 gallons. The procedure, how it was shown to me, was 300 gallons of filtered water, add in the potassium, the chloride, go through the electrolysis, capture the negative, send that back to the electrolysis, capture that negative. That was then stored, and then that was then put into a tank upon the time or when it needed to be used throughout the year into another tank with 300 gallons of filtered water. Okay.
So when you send the water from tank number 2 back to tank number 1, you're running it through the electrolysis step again.
So as I described previously, there's 2 steps of electrolysis. And in order to do that, they go through the tubes from one tank to the other tank.
And then back to the tank from which it came.
For the second stage.
Okay. is there any changes in the voltage or ampage that is applied in the second step of the electrolysis?
No.
In between these different steps that you just described, are minerals or any chemicals added at any time other than the potassium chloride at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. What minerals or chemicals and when?
So after you have the negatively charged water in the storage containers, so that procedure was only done once or twice a year. When it was ready to be used, you would take that container and 2.5 gallons of that was then added to a 300-gallon tank of filtered water and also added was magnesium chloride, potassium bicarbonate, and potassium hydroxide.
And when you're ready to use those containers, you add them to the 300 gallons of purified drinking water, and then you add the magnesium chloride, potassium bicarbonate, potassium hydroxide, correct?
2.5 gallons, yes.
Okay. 2.5 gallons of the storage container to 300 gallons of purified water, plus the minerals you just described.
2.5 gallons of the negatively charged water that was being stored. 300 gallons of filtered water, magnesium chloride, potassium bicarbonate, potassium hydroxide.
Where do you mix these ingredients together?
In a tank.
The big tank like we looked at in Exhibit 13?
Similar to those, yes.
At the Henderson facility, did you have any containers containing the negative solution?
When we moved from the Desert Inn facility, what was stored there was some of which was transferred to the Henderson facility.
Some of the negative charge solution?
Correct.
What about any of the mixed solution that included the magnesium chloride, potassium bicarbonate, potassium hydroxide?
Some of those were transferred, yes.
And so you said you would do the electrolysis process to make the negatively charged water once or twice a year?
Correct.
And so you would store the negatively charged water and use it to make the concentrate solution, correct?
Make in the next step of that procedure, yes.
So you stored it for use, usually after once or twice a year, all the negative charged water that you had would run out, right? You would use it up?
Generally, yes. I mean, I would, the procedure was followed as needed throughout the time. When you get low, you start to make some more.
In terms of the concentrate making process, adding the potassium chloride, adding the other magnesium and potassium chemicals, you mentioned that there may have been minor tweaks to the amounts at various times. Do you recall anything specific?
Very minimal variations, I guess, based off of the filtered water.
What do you mean variations based off the filtered water?
There's a standard operating procedure, SOP, that was developed by the company that goes over the mixing and making of the product. And part of that is to test the filtered water and see what the quality of that is, because that's your base, what you're starting with, and basically adjusting off of that and testing at the end to make sure that it comes out in certain quality standards ranges.
And where did you get the water, the filtered water from? The water that you filtered?
The city of Las Vegas. Or the Vegas Valley Water District, I guess is the correct.
As part of the concentrate making process, did you use any type of meters or scientific instruments?
There were meters used for making the real water product. Yes.
Just the concentrate though?
Yes.
What meters did you use?
There's a TDS meter, total dissolved solids meter.
And in what stage of the process did you use the TDS meter?
After the minerals would be mixed in.
Minerals meaning the magnesium, chloride, potassium, hydroxide, potassium bicarbonate?
Yes.
Did you add those minerals in any particular order?
Generally, I would add the potassium bicarbonate, magnesium chloride, and then the potassium hydroxide.
Was there a reason for that order?
That was how it was shown to me by John.
Were you told to follow that order?
That's how I was taught.
But did he say make sure you follow this order when you do it?
I don't recall specifically, other than that was the procedure of how it was taught to me.
Okay, and so you would use the TDS meter after you added all three chemicals?
Yes.
And what reading were you looking for?
Usually, I believe it was 500, 600.
And this was after the mixing?
Correct.
I'm sorry, I said 500, 600?
Yes.
And if it was above 500 or 600 range, or below 500, 600 range, what, if anything, would you do?
Generally, that wasn't an issue.
Do you recall ever having an issue?
I don't recall.
So if you're making a 300-gallon batch, how much concentrate would you add into the mixing tank?
I don't recall specifically, but I think we looked at an SOP earlier that states.
Okay. Okay, I think you're referring to Exhibit 25. And on the second page, it says, during the winter months, 2 gallons of E2 concentrate is to be added for each 300 gallons of incoming water. During the summer months, 2.5 gallons of E2 concentrate is to be added for 300 gallons of incoming water. Correct?
Yes, that's what I was referring back to.
Okay. So why is there a difference between the amount of E2 concentrate that you add in the winter months versus the summer months?
My understanding that John, when he developed this product and had discussions with Brent, when they were first developing everything, was that the heat during the summer months would affect the product, make the negative charge and the pH not last as long or not be as strong, and so they asked that we add a little bit more in the summer months.
Okay. So depending on the winter or summer months, and by the way, what's a winter month versus summer month?
I guess generally it would be the colder part of the year and the warmer part of the year. So maybe we split it up. April, May, one time when it changes from cold to warm, and then October, November, yeah, something like that.
This SOP also says for water that is to be consumed within 3 days of production, i.e. promo water, half the E2 concentrate is to be added. What is the reason for that?
I'm not 100% sure that was the procedure that was created prior to the development of the product with John and Brent.
We've heard testimony that it was discussed and known not to drink final product right off the line because it could make you sick. Are you aware of that at all?
That was one of the things that we cautioned people because of the ozone filtration.
Any other reason?
No.
Did you replace the meters periodically?
Yes.
How often?
It would vary based off of where the meter was being used. Many different personnel in the company would have a meter to use for different reasons, whether it be the manufacturing process, promotion, marketing, sales, showing customers in stores, different things, different reasons. So depending on the frequency of use, I guess, the more you used it, it would, not last, or it would wear out sooner, I guess is the way to put it.
Really, at the end result, the amount of concentrate that was added to the finished product depended on the negative ORP reading on the Milwaukee meter, correct?
For the most part, yes. However, I will qualify it with, the employees that they would go through certain levels of training to make sure that they're familiar with that process and making sure that they, know how to do it properly and everything. So they wouldn't rely solely on the reading of the meter. They would also use their best judgment.
And what were they trained in terms of using their best judgment?
As it says here, how much concentrate to be added.
Is there any concern with adding too much concentrate?
It would be outside of the quality range and be a waste.
Any other concerns?
Not that I'm aware of.
According to this SOP, the only approved additive is potassium bicarbonate, correct?
That's what it says.
And it references a spectrum chemical, correct?
Yes, that's what the document says.
The most recent approved product additives SOP, would that identify all of the chemicals that you mentioned today that were added to the water?
I believe it would. I don't think it would address all of the minerals, but I couldn't say for sure, as some of the minerals were part of the proprietary process, and we were instructed to keep that part proprietary.
So you left approved product additives off the SOP to preserve the proprietary nature of the concentrate?
Yes.
I want to make sure that we're very clear about just the process of the concentrate to the final product. So you start with purified water, correct?
Yes.
You add potassium chloride, correct?
Yes.
You pump it from the 300-gallon tank through piping, through the titanium tubes, back into the second tank, correct?
Generally speaking, yes, with regards to quantities and what have you.
The titanium tubes are hooked up to a charger similar to the one that we looked at to apply power to it, correct?
I'm not sure exactly what you refer to when you say charger, but we did see a picture that showed something that looked like the machine that was used as an AC/DC converter.
The AC/DC converter, it has 4 clamps, 2 attached to each titanium tube, correct?
Yes.
1 clamp is attached at the screw piece at the end. The other clamp is attached to the outside of the titanium tube, correct? That applies power to the titanium tube, which supposedly splits the water into negatively charged water and positively charged water, correct?
That's my understanding of how the procedure works and how I was taught by John, yes.
Positively charged water is disposed of down the drain, correct?
Yes.
The negatively charged water is routed through a plumbing tube through to the second 300-gallon tank, correct?
Correct.
After all the negative water goes into the second 300-gallon tank, there's about 150 gallons of water left, right?
Generally speaking, yes.
The remaining negatively charged water is then pumped through the system and the electrolysis process and the titanium tubes again, correct?
Yes.
And the positive water split from that water is disposed of, correct?
Yes.
The negative water is routed to the initial tank number 1, correct?
Yes.
At that point, you have about 75 gallons of negatively charged water, correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
That negatively charged water is put into smaller bottled containers and stored, correct?
Yes.
That stored negative water is then used to make what is referred to as the E2 concentrate, correct?
Yes.
The E2 concentrate is made by starting with 300 gallons of purified water, correct?
Yes.
And to that purified water, the 2.5 gallons of the negatively charged water is added, correct?
Yes.
And then the magnesium chloride, potassium bicarbonate, and potassium hydroxide is added in the doses that you previously testified to, correct?
Yes.
That water, that solution is mixed together and then bottled in smaller containers similar to that containers that hold the negative water, correct?
Correct.
That bottle of the mixture is what's referred to as the E2 concentrate, correct?
Yes.
That E2 concentrate is added to the purified drinking water with potassium bicarbonate or potassium hydroxide in the doses you previously testified about to make the final water product, correct?
Yes.
When you were talking about the meters that were used, you testified that they were replaced periodically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How could you tell when the meters would wear out or need to be replaced?
They would need more frequent calibration.
How often was the calibration checked?
There was a procedure set forth with how often to calibrate those probes. I don't recall specifically. And as a general rule, we had a couple, I say a couple, meaning maybe 2 or 3 spare probes on hand at all times. So there was always one able to be used.
Let's flip over to the final product. You wanted it negative 225 to negative 300. That was the target order, correct?
Correct.
And that was the same whether it was the retail or the 5-gallon bottles?
Correct.
Okay. So then in the middle of that process, we have the concentrate process. You discussed a negative 550 target for ore. Was that of the negative water or of the finished E2 concentrate?
Concentrate, E2 concentrate.
Okay, so was an ore reading taken when the electrolyzed negative water was finished?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, so it really wasn't until the additional minerals were added and the final concentrate product was put together?
Correct.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I heard you say that it was like negative 550 almost on the dot every time. Is that correct?
No, there was, I mean, it would vary, but that was the general amount.
Okay, but am I correct in hearing that you did not generally have to add any additional materials to get it to a negative 550 reading, correct?
Generally, it would come out of that reading or around that reading, yes.
Now, in terms of the finished product and the target ore, we're talking about a negative 225 to negative 300 being the target. If you got a negative 216 and the target was negative 225, would that cause you to add E2 concentrate?
The general procedure that the production line employees would take would add a slight larger amount of the concentrate to increase the ORP to get it within the quality range.
When anyone ever conveyed concerns about the mixing pump to you, did they ever tell you that when they saw the mixing pump, the water wasn't moving?
I don't recall specifically, but I do recall a time employees said that they had concerns about the pump not performing properly.
Do you recall what those concerns were?
That it wasn't working properly.
By not properly, what do you mean?
Not pumping the water at the rate that it was supposed to.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 122 of the transcript.
Okay.
So, Mr. Aiken is asked about making the concentrate, and he's describing an instance in the fall of 2020. And the question is, so it's possible there was one batch where you added more concentrate? No, what it was the reading came back a little lower. Question, lower than? Answer, lower than the parameters that are set. So I called Blaine and I let him know. I said, the readings were a little low, what should I do? He notified me to add a little more concentrate, so that's what I did. Did I read that correctly?
Looks like it, yes.
Do you recall this conversation with Mr. Aiken?
Very vaguely.
So he's asked again more about it, and he continues to say that he had a lower, that he added the amount of concentrate, he did the ORP reading, and it wasn't as negative as what the standards called for. So we called you. And he's asked, question, so you told him the reading was lower than the parameters, negative 130, and you wanted 200, and asked him what to do. And he said, put more concentrate. Answer, add more concentrate to it. Question, and did he tell you how much more concentrate to put in? Answer, I'm trying to remember what he said. I don't remember exactly what he said. I don't know what he said. He said, add some more concentrate. Page 124. I added 2.5 gallons. Question, added 2.5 gallons. Answer, and that gave me a proper reading. So I didn't add any more or any less because that's what was giving me a proper reading. So, do you recall instructing Mr. Aiken to add more concentrate to a batch he was making in order to achieve the required negative reading?
I don't specifically recall this conversation, but if I would have been approached by any employee with this situation, I would have referred him to the procedure that we looked at earlier.
Gonna real quick. Okay, if you can look at page 125 of that exhibit, starting at line 20. Question, and so he told you to add more concentrate. Answer, correct. Question, but he didn't tell you how much. Answer, no, he didn't tell me how much. Question, so you could have added 50 gallons for all he knew. Answer, he said, just make sure it ends up in the parameters we're supposed to be in. Did I read that correctly?
Looks like it.
Okay. You don't recall telling Mr. Aiken in response to a phone call to add more concentrate to get within the parameters that you need on the work reading?
As I mentioned before, I vaguely remember a conversation, but if I would have been approached by any employee, not just Casey, but any employee that was in charge of mixing the product and that was their responsibility, I would have referred him to the procedure that we went over earlier to get the product into those quality standard ranges.
Is that it? It actually went a little quicker than we anticipated. All right, and so after this afternoon, we'll have one live witness and more video deposition testimony. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably the time to go to lunch, and I think it's important to go at this point versus going a little further, because it's my understanding downstairs closes early, is that correct? On Friday, so we want to make sure, and I don't know about across the street, they might do something similar. But if you want to go get something to eat, other than maybe what you brought today, I just want to make sure you have that opportunity. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial. So you read, watch, or listen to the report or commentary on the person's case by any means of information, including the communications, newspaper, television, radio. Remember the social media prohibition, and last but not least, permit form or express your opinion on any subject connected with this trial to the causes from this meeting to you. I'm thinking, 1:15.
1:15, Your Honor. All rights to the court to adjourn. Jury is clear. Please be seated. Thank you.
Anything else we need to address outside the press?
We can do it when we get back from lunch.